This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East. U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice arrived at the Green Zone in Baghdad during a surprise visit, which she said she noticed an improvement in the security situation and political closeness in Iraq, which wants to see a better diplomatic presence of its Arab neighbors. Meanwhile, an American general in Iraq threatened to respond militarily to the Shiite leader Muqtada Sadr if he carried out his threats and attacked the Iraqi and American forces.
The threats of war launched by the leader of the Sadr Front, Muqtada Sadr, are a sign of tough times ahead, filled with the smell of gunpowder, which will increase the number of the explosions which have no limit on the Iraqi horizon. Friends and their allies of yesterday have today become the enemies of the Iraqi government and the U.S. Army. This compelled the Sadr wing to describe the government of Noor al-Maliki, who he had previously supported in 2006, as unappreciative. In a statement, Muqtada Sadr, the leader of the Mahdi army, threatened to declare an open war, which he tied to the cooling-off period.
I am making a final warning to the Iraqi government that it refrains itself and takes the path of peace to stop the violence against its people. If it does not stop the militias that have infiltrated the government, then we will declare open warfare until liberation.
The Sadr wing's threats, which met support from Tehran, came after a statement made by the Iranian ambassador in Iraq in which he criticized the military operations and the siege imposed on Sadr city. He saw the government's step as a monopoly over weapons.
The Americans' insistence on monitoring military practices is wrong. It will have negative results and the government will have to take responsibility. The steps taken by the government to pursue outlaws is right, whether in Basra or anywhere within the Iraqi borders.
The disagreement between the Sadr faction and al-Maliki's government began a year ago after Muqtada Sadr demanded a timetable for the withdrawal of the U.S. forces from Iraq, a request that al-Maliki's government has rejected. This led to an escalation between the Sadr faction and the Iraqi government, which threatened to keep the Sadr faction away from the political process. In the name of containing armed chaos and the pursuit of outlaws, the Iraqi government, backed by the U.S. forces, launched attacks against the Mahdi army militias. Meanwhile, Muqtada Sadr threatened to declare an open war, which has stirred fear among some Iraqis. However, some Iraqis expressed hope for a cooling-off period between the two sides.
We wish that the remarks made by Muqtada al-Sadr were a call to peace and not a threat of war.
What we need is not more wars and confrontations, but peaceful actions.
The forceful confrontations, which continue to leave behind dozens of casualties each day, are further fueling this bloody scene. Meanwhile, the Iraqi citizen who is raising the flag of peace on both sides of the conflict is wondering who to support. Is it Muqtada Sadr, who is backed by Tehran and who is trying to maintain control in southern Iraq, which includes most of Iraq's oil reserves? Or is it Noor al-Maliki, who is backed by Washington and who is trying to achieve peace and stability in the country?
One day ahead of the meeting of Iraq's neighbors in Kuwait, international and Arab figures continued to call for support of the political process in Iraq. Such a call was made by U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, who called on Arab nations to open its embassies in Baghdad, and by the Iraqi foreign minister, who renewed his request to neighboring countries to support the political process.
اجتماع آخر لدول جوار العراق يبدو أنه سيكون الأكبر بين المؤتمرات السابقة التي عقدت بخصوص.
There will be another meeting of the neighboring states of Iraq. It appears that it will be the largest meeting compared to previous ones, which were held to support the stability of this country. In addition to the neighboring countries, the G8 industrial countries will be attending this meeting, as well as delegations representing 29 other countries and regional and international organizations.
The meeting, which will be held in Kuwait for 2 days, will debate the most important issues facing Iraq, especially the security situation, which imposed itself after an escalation in violence and the danger posed by militias and armed fighters to the relative stability that was witnessed in the country after, for instance, wide-scale campaigns had succeeded in reducing the intensity of attacks by al-Qaeda. It appears that the consensus that was achieved at the Iraqi political level with regard to disarming militias will be one of the most important issues on the agenda at the meeting. It is anticipated that this approach will gain the support of the participants at the meeting. In addition, the continued clashes between government forces on one side and the Mehdi army militia on the other will dominate the security situation in Iraq and reduce stability. The Iraqi government, for its part, will call on neighboring countries to take a permanent and supportive position on its efforts to achieve security, stability, and the rebuilding of Iraq. Under this framework, there are usually wide-scale debates about foreign intervention and internal Iraqi affairs. Baghdad will also likely ask Arab neighbors to forgive its debt and reopen their embassies there. However, many Arab capitals approach this step with caution. Khalid al-Alawi, Al-Arabiya.
تنظر بحذر إلى هذه الخطوة. خالد عويس، العربية.
No respite from Qassam rockets for residents of the western Negev and beyond today. Gaza terrorists fired 4 rockets, one of which landed in Ashkelon. There were no injuries or damage reported. But the chairman of the Sha'ar HaNegev Regional Council narrowly escaped injury when a Qassam rocket landed close to him as he jogged in an open field. Security sources say that the IDF is preparing for escalating attacks by Palestinian terrorists on the Gaza border crossings. This is part of the Hamas-led campaign to break the Israeli-imposed blockade. IBA's Dennis Zinn has more on the story.
Hamas has focused its war on the Gaza border crossings, and the IDF is preparing for an escalation in violence. This, according to a military source this morning, in reference to Saturday's attack on the Kerem Shalom checkpoint. The source said that according to military assessments, in the immediate future, Hamas will increase its efforts to remove the isolating blockade that has been imposed by the IDF due to continued arms smuggling into Gaza and attempts by terrorists to cross into Israel. According to the head of the IDF Southern Command, Major General Yoav Gallant, Saturday's attack was the largest and most brazen that has been carried out since the Gaza disengagement in 2005. He praised the professionalism of the deputy commander of the battalion stationed at the crossing, who he said prevented a major tragedy. This is the Palestinian armored vehicle in foggy light moments before it crashed into the border fence, and this is one of the explosive-laden jeeps disguised with IDF insignia which drove through the breached border. The alert deputy battalion commander spotted the first jeep, realized it was suspect, and ordered his men to take cover, saving them from certain death. 16 were evacuated to hospital with light wounds. 3 Hamas gunmen were killed. The Hamas crew of the APC abandoned the vehicle and ran back into the Gaza Strip. A second APC, which was driving towards the crossing soon after the attack, was hit by an IDF tank shell. The Hamas organization held a press conference where it claimed responsibility for the attack.
The situation of the target close to a border crossing that allows goods into the Gaza Strip is irrelevant because the target was purely military.
Meanwhile, 8 armed Palestinians were killed in air operations across the Gaza Strip since the Kerem Shalom attack. 2 both Hamas members were killed in separate airstrikes this morning, one in Rafah and the second on the car in Bet Hanun. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
And no peace without Hamas. That was the message from former U.S. President Jimmy Carter as he ended a tour of the Middle East. While speaking in Jerusalem, Carter read out a written statement from Hamas that said they were willing to accept Israel's existence within 1967 borders. While Carter admitted there had been a recent regression in the peace process, he was optimistic that negotiations on both sides could achieve peace in his lifetime. David Chater reports.
Confounding his critics in both Washington and Israel, the former US President Jimmy Carter has succeeded in wresting what he claims is a significant concession from Hamas after his meetings in Damascus. A concession which he said means, in effect, the organization will recognize the state of Israel within its pre-1967 borders, if that is the will of the Palestinian people.
If President Abbas succeeds in negotiating a final status agreement with Israel, Hamas will accept the decision made by the Palestinian people and their will through a referendum monitored by the international observers, including those from the Carter Center, or by a newly elected Palestinian National Council by mechanisms agreed upon nationally, even if Hamas is opposed to the agreement.
Jimmy Carter also brought a clear signal from the Syrian government. They were willing to talk peace with Israel over the Golan Heights, and he called on Washington to end its diplomatic isolation of Damascus.
I was impressed with their eagerness to complete the agreement on the Golan Heights. He said that the only major difference in starting good faith talks was that Israel insisted that there be no public acknowledgement that the talks were going on, whereas Syria insisted that the talks being conducted would not be a secret, and that 85% of all the differences had already been resolved, including an agreement on the borders, on the riparian water rights as they apply to the Sea of Galilee, on the security zones, and on the presence of international forces.
The former US president also had news for the parents of the kidnapped Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Although Hamas refused to release him, they did agree to allow him to send out another letter to his family.
We asked the Hamas to permit Corporal Shalit to send his parents another letter to show them that he was in good condition and alive, and they agreed to do so, and that letter will be forthcoming very shortly.
Jimmy Carter stressed he had no role as a mediator in the present conflict, but called on all parties involved to take risks for peace.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Dave.
So far, there's been no official reaction from Israel to Carter's comments. Israel, as well as the United States, have refused to acknowledge Carter's visit in any official capacity. However, retired Brigadier General Shlomo Brom says he and many others in Israel agree it's time to engage seriously with Hamas.
Well, I hope that the Israeli government will accept it as sufficient to start a certain level of engagement of Hamas, understanding that it's not possible to achieve stability and tranquility and to have a real progress in the peace process without Hamas. I believe that that's what the majority of Israelis want. I think we can learn from different public opinion surveys that say that Israelis are willing to have negotiations with the Palestinian National Unity Government that will include Hamas.
الكلام عن مصاعد التهدئة لن يجعل غزة بمنأى عن العمليات الانتقامية.
Talks about calm did not spare Gaza from Israel's revenge. At dawn, an Israeli aircraft carried out an operation on the town of Beit Hanun in northern Gaza. Ikrima Abu Audi was martyred. He was 22 years old and a member of Al-Qassam brigade, the military wing of Hamas. Death in Gaza does not come by Israeli machinery alone. After Israel, the primary culprit in killing people is the siege, which has been ongoing for several months. 71% of Gaza's children suffer from malnutrition and anemia. Often, this leads to diseases that cannot be treated locally due to the lack of drugs and medical supplies. The persistence of this condition forebodes inevitable disaster for the people of Gaza. زهير سقالة reports from Gaza.
يقف الغزيون على شفيرها. زهير سقالة من غزة.
الصحة مريضة في غزة والسبب هو ذاته
Gaza is in poor health because of the siege that speeds up death. Fighting disease has become difficult for adults, but it is harder on the children. The worsening health conditions and the poor environment in Gaza has raised the percentage of children suffering from malnutrition to 71%, according to reports by healthcare commissions.
More than 50% of children under 5 years of age are suffering from anemia. 72% of children under 1 year of age are anemic. They exhibit dangerous symptoms, including low weight and stunted growth in relation to their age. These are serious indications of a disastrous deterioration of the health and life of Palestinian children in Gaza.
The causes of the children's suffering are many, but they all fall under the title of the occupation siege. The occupation has blocked the entry of necessary vaccines, food, and medication, and it has stopped purifying the water. All this leads to diseases that eat away at the children and devour them whole. The piling of trash defacing the environment might warn of yet another disaster which is beyond the visible signs.
All these things cause serious harm. They clearly warn of deterioration in the near future in regards to children suffering from malnutrition, especially those under the age of 5.
The children of Gaza are starving, their childhoods have been pirated, and their futures executed. Their bodies have become fertile soil for breeding diseases stemming from malnutrition. Their parents eat sour grapes while their children are teething. In a society where the majority of people are below the poverty line, malnutrition becomes a given. The reasons are many, but the harm is one of the same. Zuhair Sukala, Dubai TV, Gaza. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said that some whom he referred to as friendly mediators are exerting diligent efforts to restart the negotiations between Syria and Israel. This news came during a meeting that was held yesterday with the command center of the ruling Ba'ath Party.
While al-Assad didn't reveal the identity of the mediators, diplomats in Syria said that Turkey is likely to be the one leading the diplomatic efforts. Meanwhile, Israel has not commented on al-Assad's statement.
Syria will continue to be a country of resistance and opposition. These words are not foreign to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's speeches. What is strange are his recent remarks about certain diplomatic efforts being made to resume talks with Israel. Al-Assad's comments came during a meeting with the command center of his ruling Ba'ath Party. He further said that some friends are working towards achieving this objective, and added that Israel knows very well what Damascus will or will not accept. Al-Assad stressed that Syria's acceptance of any negotiations with Israel is preconditioned by the latter's commitment to the UN resolutions. Al-Assad's speech comes a day after his country hosted an unprecedented meeting between the head of Hamas's political office, Khalid Mash'al, and former US President Jimmy Carter. Turkey is believed to be behind the diplomatic exploration between Syria and Israel. An Israeli negotiator confirmed that an advisor for the Turkish president is relaying the messages between the two sides. This news also comes days after the Israeli Prime Minister confirmed that the two sides have indeed been exchanging messages. It has been noted that Syria, since the Madrid Peace Conference was held, has demanded Israel's full withdrawal from the Golan Heights in exchange for peace. This Syrian demand was also reiterated before and during the Annapolis Conference. Parallel to that, secret talks between Israel and Syria have taken place at unofficial levels during 2004 and 2006. According to analysts, by keeping the path of negotiations open between Syria and Israel, the latter, along with Washington, are intending to isolate Damascus from Iran and Hezbollah. This is rather important to Israel, especially considering that all the scenarios during Bush's remaining months in office don't rule out an Israeli or American or a joint military strike against Tehran and perhaps against Hezbollah. By isolating Syria from Iran and Hezbollah, the US and Israel will be able to rally larger Arab support, which is appropriate for this type of military action.
للعام الثامن على التوالي تتواصل معاناة المواطنين في جنين.
The suffering of Palestinian citizens in Jenin continues for the 8th consecutive year due to the siege imposed by the occupation soldiers. All checkpoints, especially the ones near the Green Line, are closed.
محافظة جنين ذات 300,000 نسمة الواقعة شمال الضفة الغربية.
Jenin, home to 300,000 Palestinians, is located in the northern part of the West Bank across the Green Line. Its economy was truly devastated. More than 1,000 businesses were closed and more than 1,000 others were destroyed. Sales decreased by 90% and unemployment reached more than 50%, and more than 65% of Jenin's residents live under the poverty line. This has been the situation in Jenin since 2000.
ذلك الذي يعيشه المواطنون في محافظة جنين منذ عام 2000. فجنين التي كانت تربطها.
Jenin has strong economic and social ties with Israel since 1967 due to its location and proximity to the Green Line. However, these ties have been completely paralyzed since the year 2000 when Al-Aqsa Intifada began. The Israeli occupation army closed military checkpoints near the Green Line and built the apartheid wall. These Israeli measures have caused economic deterioration in Jenin's markets and has increased the unemployment rates.
تجاريا في أسواق جنين وبطالة مرتفعة المنسوب في صفوف العمال.
أسباب التدهور الاقتصادي في محافظة جنين.
The economic situation completely collapsed in Jenin after the second intifada for several reasons. First, we used to heavily depend on our Arab-Israeli brothers who used to come and shop in Jenin. Second, the apartheid wall, which was built by Israel, has isolated Palestinian areas from one another and has caused economic deterioration.
في محل تجاري في جنين أغلقت أبوابها بأمر من الأوضاع الاقتصادية الكارثية التي يعيشها
Some commercial stores in Jenin were forced to close their doors due to the catastrophic conditions. Other stores continue to conduct business, but they are going through tough times. All kinds of products are available in these stores, but there is no one to buy them.
الأمر الذي ينعكس سلبا على أصحاب هذه المحال التجارية.
أنت يعني شرائية ما في مش موجودة طبعا لأنه
People are not buying things for several reasons. First, the economic conditions are difficult. Also, our Arab-Israeli brothers can no longer come to Jenin at all. The afflicted city of Jenin has been suffering from very difficult economic conditions.
مدينة جنين بلد منكوبة بتعاني مش وضع اقتصادي صعب جدا.
الحركة التجارية ضعيفة جدا لأنه في عنا مشكلة كبيرة فيش عنا دخل المواطنين هنا.
The economic activities are very slow because citizens here do not have an income, which is a big problem. Our economy is completely dependent on Israel. Citizens do not have purchasing power. This is a huge obstacle here in the West Bank, especially in Jenin. We do not have services. We lack everything in Jenin.
The people of Jenin are urging everyone to help improve their devastated economy. From Jenin, Nizar Sammoudi, Palestine Television.
من محافظة جنين نزار سمودي تلفزيون فلسطين.
تحية لكم. إذا أردت أن تغير وجه العالم فلتبدأ بالأطفال.
To change the face of the world, you have to begin with the children. Gandhi said this, but it does not apply to the children of Afghanistan. From the early hours of the morning until nightfall, you come across faces of children no more than 12 years old, imposing their existence on the streets. One boy shines shoes, while another cleans cars, and another, too young to work, settles for begging. Some of them live off the garbage, searching for something to satisfy their hunger year after year. This has been the reality imposed on the children for 3 decades as a result of continuous warfare. From the time of the Taliban until the coalition forces, the situation keeps deteriorating. Nothing has changed, in spite of promises made by the Afghan government to attend to these miserable conditions. Exasperating, the problem is that these children are oftentimes the sole providers for their families who lost their primary provider in the war. But how long can the children wait? More in the following report.
التي فقدت معيلها بسبب الحرب، ولكن إلى متى يمكن الانتظار؟ المزيد في هذا التقرير.
They live on food from the garbage, and they work by shining shoes or cleaning cars. This is the reality for thousands of street children in Afghanistan, who find employment on the harsh street to provide food for themselves and for their families. Many families lost their main provider in the war that has persisted for 3 decades.
I come out every morning trying to find someone to help me. My father died in one of the battles, and I'm the sole provider for my family. In the evening, I go to school. I'm in 5th grade.
Walking around the streets and narrow alleyways of the capital, Kabul, you will inevitably bump into dozens of children no more than 12 years old. Although they should be in school during the daytime, they follow you with street dirt covering their faces and their hands outstretched. They beg for the amount to buy a loaf of bread, which usually costs less than $0.25 of a US dollar.
I work on this street. There is no honorable work around here. The government doesn't provide us with anything, and unemployment is rampant. The government should protect the children and establish work projects.
مخاطر جمة يتعرض لها أطفال الشوارع في أفغانستان في ظل انعدام الأمن.
Afghanistan's street children are exposed to many dangers because of the absence of security and law enforcement. This is especially the case in the tension-ridden southern region. In its most recent reports, UNICEF warned of the dangers that face the children of Afghanistan, who are exposed to violence and destitution while begging. They are easy prey for armed groups, used in what has become known as terrorism acts. UNICEF called on the international community and donor countries to establish projects that serve street children.
داعية المجتمع الدولي والدول المانحة إقامة مشاريع تحتضن أطفال الشوارع.
تلاش‌های جامعه جهانی تا هنوز نتوانسته به این معضل نقطه پایان بگذارد.
The Afghan society and international community failed to fulfill their promises to provide job opportunities, especially for the children who have lost their fathers. Local and international communities should create special programs for Afghanistan's children to contain their problem and make them healthy members of society.
The dozens of local and international relief organizations whose banners crowd the streets of Kabul are incapable of containing the problem of street children. They have not succeeded thus far in producing smiles on the faces of children who have been deprived of joy since infancy. The children of Afghanistan are exposed to many dangers, beginning with severe poverty, a breakdown of their family, ending with destitution, and falling into the traps of exploitation. Reporting for our Alams from reality, this is Mahmoud Al-Wathiq, Kabul.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.